Time for another coffee with Kilroy, or what I sometimes call, many times call, beverage in a book. My beverage, yes, you know it, it's coffee. And let's get this off this map. Some of you do not like it when I put the beverage on the map, and I don't like it either, but I'm very, very, very careful. So I say. The book is Tales of War, yes. Take a look at my Tales of War playlist, which is down below, where I cover entries from this book. There are 365 or so. Sometimes there's double entries on the day for each day of the year. These are military history snippets. And today, can you guess what I'm going to be covering? Yes, today is April 1st. April Fool's Day, but also the beginning of the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. The Allies' last battle in the against the Japanese, not counting the bomb droppings. So let's get into the book and see what we have in store for us today. I'll pull this up here a little bit. 1st April. The last battle of the Second World War, 1945. It was Easter Sunday today when at 0830 hours, 4 Marine and U.S. 10th Army divisions landed on the west coast of the Japanese island of Okinawa to begin what would turn out to be the final land battle of the Second World War. Okinawa was to be a springboard for the invasion of Japan, only 200 miles to the west. Now 180,000 ground troops commanded by Army Lieutenant General Simon Buckner and supported by 18,000 Navy personnel on board the invasion fleet were readying themselves for one of the bloodiest battles in the entire Pacific War. Prior to the landings, Buckner had ordered a massive softening up of enemy defensive. Dive bombers from the fleet's 40 carriers targeted enemy positions, while 18 battleships, 32 cruisers, and 200 destroyers mercilessly pounded the island. Meanwhile, the Japanese tunneled deep into the soft limestone in the rugged south of Okinawa, leaving the north defended largely by conscripted indigenous Okinawans who had been told to fight to the death or commit suicide rather than suffer the torture and execution that awaited them and their families if captured by the Americans. The initial landings were relatively easy, and the northern 3/4 of the island fell to the Marines in less than 3 weeks. The 2 Army divisions battered their way south, where they encountered ever-increasing resistance from units of the Japanese 32nd Army. 77,000 men backed up by 40,000 local militia, dug in underground, often on the reverse slopes of hills, and thus largely protected from American bombing and naval gunfire. Within the Japanese top brass, there was disagreement about how to meet the invasion. Some favored an aggressive policy of banzai charges, while others pushed for a defensive strategy with pre-planned fields of machine gun and artillery fire that would make the invaders pay for every inch of ground. The Japanese did launch several human-wave banzai attacks, but they were bloodily repulsed with huge loss of life. From then on, they opted for stubborn defense. Japanese soldiers hidden in fortified caves and bunkers ambushed American troops, and accurate artillery made tanks ineffective. Meanwhile, the Japanese relentlessly hit American fleet with waves of kamikaze, and the Yamamoto, the largest battleship ever built, attempted to attack, but was sunk by American bombers and torpedo planes before she could get within range. Only 269 of the battleship's crew of 3,332 survived. She carried neither rafts nor lifeboats, which might suggest the salvation was preferable to honorable death in defeat. That's kind of a weird sentence there. A light cruiser and 4 destroyers of the Yamamoto's screening force also went to the bottom at the cost of only 10 U.S. aircraft. By the end of April, with 2 Army divisions bogged down in the south, Buckner sent for Marine divisions to join them, forced to clear out each cave with satchel charges and flamethrowers. The Marines took heavy casualties but kept moving. When the Japanese retreated deep inside their caves, bulldozers sealed off the caves' mouths, dooming the defenders inside. In May, monsoon rains mired the troops in mud, and decaying Japanese courses sank into the quagmire, but the Japanese continued to fight ferociously even as the American warships shelled their positions and Navy and Marine planes attacked them with napalm, rockets, bombs, and machine guns. The defenders often blew themselves up with their own grenades rather than surrender. Wow, this is pretty bleak. By early June, a vastly reduced Japanese force had holed up at the south of the island, now facing certain defeat. On the 18th, before the final victory, the American commander Buckner was cut down by Japanese artillery, the highest-ranking American killed by enemy fire during the entire Second World War. But by now, the battle was effectively over. Just 4 days later, the top Japanese general, Mitsuriri Yoshihime, committed seppuku, disembowelling himself with a short sword followed by beheading by an aide. The Battle of Okinawa had been extraordinarily costly for both sides. Of the 118,000 Japanese soldiers, some 110,000 had perished, either killed in battle, entombed, or sealed in caves, or by their own hand. In addition, about 150,000 native Okinawans, a third of the population, had been killed or committed suicide. The Americans had lost 8,000 dead fighting on the island and another 5,000 at sea, and almost 40,000 more had been wounded. My uncle was one of them. I'll get to that in a second. The carnage of Okinawa had a further, perhaps even more important effect. America's new president, Harry Truman, had been examining the plans for invasion of Japanese mainland. Based primarily on the death toll at Okinawa, his staff now projected the invasion's cost at 1 million American casualties and an unimaginable number of Japanese, assuming that they would defend their homeland with even more ferocity. Then on 16th of July in Alamogordo, New Mexico, the first atomic bomb was successfully tested. With the bloodshed at Okinawa fresh on his mind, Truman ordered it dropped on Hiroshima on 6th of August, my oldest daughter's birthday. So there you go. I mentioned that my uncle, one of my uncles, I had several uncles that fought in World War II. I've talked about Theo before. He died in New Guinea. My uncle Raymond, William Raymond Carroll, he originally joined the Army, and then I think he was part of the Seabees, and then he was a Marine at Okinawa and got a Purple Heart. He was wounded at Okinawa. For years, I thought my family had told me he was fought at Iwo Jima, so I was a little mistaken on that, but I did some more history and found out that he actually fought at Okinawa and was wounded and got a Purple Heart there. So let's talk about the games that I have for Okinawa. The first one I want to talk about is Picket Duty. This is about the kamikaze attacks versus the U.S. destroyers during the long kind of siege of Okinawa, because it took a long time to, as you saw in the entry, to clear the island. So this is Picket Duty. You are on a destroyer and commanding all aspects of the destroyer. And I've covered, I believe I've covered an unboxing of this, so I'll put a link to that in the description. But this is a very interesting solo game. There's a lot going on here. You've got a lot to run around the ship and manage damage and manage wounds and trying to attack enemy aircraft that are, doing kamikaze attacks as you come in. So this is a very, interesting game, and highly recommend this if you want to do a solitaire perspective of Picket Duty, of the Battle of Okinawa at sea, and a different perspective on that. Now to Okinawa, the game that came in Wargamer magazine. I've also covered the unbagging of this one as well, and I'll put a link to that in the description down below. But this came in Wargamer magazine number 55. I've already taken the rules out, which leaves not much of a magazine left. But the rules are quite voluminous for a magazine game. It's 27 pages, but they were all kind of voluminous back then. But there are there's charts and tables in here as well, as you can see here in the middle, that you can kind of pull that out to play as you go along. But triple column, 27 pages, kind of small print, so definitely a sign of its times. But here is the map for Okinawa. And there's kind of a morale chart up here. There's a turn track. There's terrain. You've got bombardment. So you've got a lot of stuff going on on this map. The counters, I have not played this version of it, so I still have my counters fresh and pristine. And I wanted to point out there's some little bit of register problem here. They were a little off here, and unfortunately, my uncle's unit right here, I believe this is his unit. You can see that the 6 is off the side here, but this was my my uncle's unit. He was a Marine at Okinawa and was wounded there, so I got that right there, so you can see that. That's what my uncle has since passed away. Came back to the States and had a relatively long and hopeful, fruitful life. Visited him several times. He lived was from Georgia, but lived mostly in Alabama. So, as I said, for years I thought I was told he was fought at Iwo Jima, and I wrongly referenced that in probably some of my other videos. But I am correcting the record today. There is my uncle right there, or at least his unit right there. And maybe that's how he got wounded, because the 6 was cut off there a little bit. Anyway, but he was wounded at Okinawa, which, as you saw from the reading today, very, very bloody battle, and just kind of gruesome details all around. Anyway, so that's what I had for you today on my Tales of War April Fool's Day. I mean, who was the fool? Oh my God, pretty bloody battle. So that's what I have for you. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'd love to know your thoughts on this game, or on Picket Duty, or on, anything you want to talk about. Just, keep it civil. Anyway, thank you so much for stopping by, and take care. Thanks for watching.